everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Every Rocky Ever, the Colorado Rockies podcast, here for the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network, part of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Skylar Timmons, and joined here once again, as always on this show, with my brother wearing a Blues Jays hat. It's Dustin Timmons.
I put it on earlier and then didn't take it off.
It all works. I'm wearing a Burlington Sock Puppets hat as we get some lighting on my face. Yeah, we're always aficionados of our hats. So that's what we talk about. But on this new episode, we're figuring in June, it's Father's Day in June. We're a little late on the gun, but it's just the nature of recording these things. But we figured, what better little duo to do here for an episode here in June, and figured, well, who's the only father-son combo to have ever played for the Rockies? Not at the same time, but it's the old Eric Youngs, junior and senior.
The EYs, the EY squared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a fun one to do, not only with this month, and then there's also all the cool stuff MLB has done with celebrating the Negro Leagues and just players inspired by the great Willie Mays, who just passed away. And so there's a lot of these African American players. There's some of that celebration. I think it's been cool seeing a lot of those stories, influences come up, and I figured two guys that fit into those categories as well. And memorable for Rockies fans is Eric Young Sr. and his son, Eric Young Jr.
Yeah, and we were looking. I focused more on EY Senior. He's more of my time, and then EY Junior. Those Rockies years that I've tried to forget about.
Yeah, they're two distinct eras because you have an original Rocky, and then you have someone they were just kind of holding on to because he was the son of an original Rocky, and then they both kind of cross paths where EY Senior, he was a first base coach for the team. He's cross paths just with the team in general when EY Junior was here, and so they're both kind of have that weird cross section where they're just both kind of around the Rockies at the same exact time as well, which it was just kind of cool to see that those two eras kind of combining together as the only father and son who have suited up in a Rockies uniform.
And they made a very good Rockies commercial together.
Mm-hmm. My man. Yeah, we'll get into all of that here, but figure we might as well start off with the father of the two, an original Rocky, one Eric Young, who I guess he was always senior at that point still, but old Eric Young. And Dustin, take it away for the first EY the Elder.
EY the Elder, primarily a second baseman, but also played in the outfield. From New Brunswick, New Jersey. He was originally drafted by the Dodgers in the 43rd round of the '89 draft out of Rutgers University, and he was a wide receiver there too, actually. And then he went over to our Rockies with the 11th pick of the expansion draft, and he played for the Rockies in the '93 season up through the '97 season, when he was traded back to his original team of the Dodgers for Pedro Estacio. And then he bounced around from the Dodgers, went to the Cubs, played for the Brewers, over to the Rangers, and then kind of down to the Padres, back to the Rangers, and he was done with his professional major league career in 2006. And then we see he went into broadcasting, he was into Baseball Tonight, and then he came over to the Rockies, as you said before, as a first base coach. And then he's moved around in some other coaching positions with the Braves, and now he is a first base coach for the Angels.
Yeah, I think he's third base.
Or third base.
For the Angels.
Yeah. with Ron Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been, all over, but he was a staple in the Rockies lineup from 93 to halfway through the 97 season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, surprising that you don't think he's been around that long, but man, 15 years in the big leagues with quite a few teams. No, for me, I just like, oh yeah, I knew he played for the Rockies and then played for the Dodgers, and then that's all I remember, all I ever know about him. But the fact that he played for so many teams, that was kind of surprising to me. A good reminder. So what, 7 teams in general? Yeesh.
Well, then he had post Rockies success. He had a 283 batting average for his career,
Mm-hmm.
which was pretty good. He had, I think, 3 seasons of 50 stolen bases or more, and 2 of those were, in his 30s,
Mm-hmm.
with other teams. He had one with the Rockies, I think, and then the rest, a couple more later on in his career. But that's what he was known for, was for his offensive ability, because the defensive side, not too good.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Is no, he had all these good years for the Rockies and everything, but then uh, Don Baylor just did not like his defense, and so didn't really want to play him strictly for that aspect of, well, it doesn't matter if he can hit. We have no place to play him because we don't trust his defense, and that's hurting us. And so he's just kind of a net zero because he's not. He's having to counteract either side of the ball.
Well, that was the thing in that 93 season. It was 15 errors at 15 errors at second base. And
Hmm.
so they flip him over to the outfield and he has 6 more errors.
Hmm.
And so it's like, all right, come on, man. Like, your offensive ability's there, but they're killing him on the defensive end.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think he was after that huge '96 season. I guess we can get into what he did with the Rockies. 613 games in a Rockies uniform and a slash line of a 295 batting average, 378 on base, 412 slugging, had a 790 OPS, or for you modern day nerds, a 93 OPS plus. Had 626 hits, 102 doubles, 28 triples, 30 home runs, 227 RBIs, 180 stolen bases. We'll talk about the speedy boy. 155 strikeouts. Get this, 254 walks in a Rockies uniform. So across the line, a lot of good stuff. He also had 75 sacrifice bunts, it looks like, and 17 sack flies. It doesn't count, doesn't show me exactly bunt hits in general, but pretty good in a Rockies uniform over 5 years as kind of a budding star that they got in the expansion draft. Kind of one of those first cornerstone pieces of those early days of the Rockies.
Yeah, and the numbers that stick out to me are that stolen bases, the batting average really good, but the ratio between walks versus strikeouts.
Mm-hmm.
And in his career, he had more walks than strikeouts,
Mm-hmm.
which
Which,
is, man, if we could get some plate discipline like that nowadays.
mm-hmm. And you look back, that's just the era of the game back then where strikeouts were generally kind of lower for a lot of guys because just the way the game was played and the way they approached coming up to the plate. And so EY was what your leadoff guy, your prototypical leadoff guy. His job is to get on base, swipe second, come around to score for the next guy, set up the table for the big cats, the Bichettes, the Castillas, those types of guys, the Larry Walkers, set the table for them and score runs. Because we saw what 378 runs scored in a Rockies uniform. Pretty good for your leadoff guy, setting the table all the time. Yeah, he's not going to be driving in as many runs. Most he had in a Rockies uniform was 74 in 1996, a career year that we'll get into. But setting the table, getting on base, doing his thing. And that's huge for an offense. You need a guy that can get on base, and that's what EY Senior could do.
Yeah, and his the other thing that sticks out to me is his lone playoff appearance with the Rockies in the against Atlanta. He batted 438. He went 7 for 16 with 2 walks, um, a home run, a stolen base, and in the his 4 games in the playoffs with the Rockies, that was legit.
Mm-hmm.
Then his only other postseason experiences with the Padres back in 2005, when it was also again pretty solid appearance. He he played 3 games, 2 hits and 6 at bats, but one of them was a home run, 3 RBI.
Mm-hmm.
So that's dang, with those kind of stats, I wish he would have got more playoff experience,
Yeah.
because in the very small portion that he got, it was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And you could say a lot about those Rockies teams there in the 90s. Those offensive players, like, man, I wish those guys had gotten more experience in the playoffs. But across the board, they slot him in at second base there in their first season. And like we said, the defense wasn't great. There's always room for improvement, but passable enough. He probably was going to win a Gold Glove there, but probably passable enough. But we mentioned Don Baylor just kind of didn't like that, just didn't like his defense. And so I think that kind of put some hindrance on things where he would do these really good things at the plate, but because of his defense, plays 144 games in 1993, does pretty good. 94 is the shortened strike season, still doing pretty good offensively, but then you just see that defense just kind of middle of the road, nothing special to write home about. But he really sets the world on fire in 1996, the year I was born. So you're welcome, Eric Young. 29 years old, puts in basically a career year at the plate, 141 games played, had 184 hits, 53 stolen bases. That led the league. He also got caught 19 times. That also led the league. Had 74 RBIs, 8 home runs, 23 doubles, 4 triples, 47 walks. Hit 324, 393, 421 with an OPS of 814. Just across the board. Pretty good year. All-Star, Silver Slugger. That's the type of year you want when you're kind of starting to go into some contract negotiations.
Yeah, but it did. So what the Rockies did is then just re-sign him for a year, and I think it's because, like you said, Don Baylor just was like, "All right, well, we can move on from this guy now," and they ended up trading him in that '97 season to the Dodgers, but they got somebody really good in return.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was, and everybody, when we talk about EY Senior, you know, they won't remember the 53 stolen bases in a season, that 96 All-Star year, the Silver Slugger. They won't remember, sometimes they will, the 6 stolen base game that he had. He gets on, but still second, still third, still's home. He
Mm-hmm.
was just, a menace on the base pass. We all remember in 1993, the first game in Denver at Mile High Stadium against the Expos, when EY Senior rips a ball, a
Mm-hmm.
no doubter, to lead the game off, or to lead the bottom half of the first. 80,000 plus fans.
Mm-hmm.
when people, the old generation, you talk about Rockies baseball, it's that home run, the 95 home opener at Coors Field with Dante Bichette walk-off. Like, those are the iconic home runs in Rockies baseball history.
Hmm. Yeah, and because just so many things. The first game in Denver, playing at Mile High Stadium, setting up giant giant attendance records, and super loud environment. Happened to be against the Expos, and it's that series that kind of sits with one Hall of Famer that eventually signs with the team a year after that or so. But just in kind of iconic mode that everybody knows of, whether you're a brand new Rockies fan or an OG like Dustin, that's a moment that sticks with everybody. The first just like big Denver moment was during 2020 when they had their simulated kind of uh, opening day game where they just showed clips from different tops and bottom halves of innings. That was the one they showed in the bottom of the first. Um, is Eric Young Jr.'s leadoff home run in the bottom of the first against the Montreal Expos.
And that was the only home run he hit in the first half of the season. The second half he hit two more, but he wasn't really known as a home run hitter. But it was like a right-handed Ken Griffey Jr. kind of
Mm-hmm.
whap. It was like, oh dang,
Mm-hmm.
That immortalized. He could have done nothing else in his career, and we would have remembered Eric Young Sr. for that home run.
Mm-hmm. And he set himself up as an all-time Rocky. I'm looking at his, according to Baseball Reference, here's where he sits on leaderboards in franchise history. He's tied with Dexter Fowler, kind of fitting, as number 14th in position player WAR at a 9.5. Defensively, in defensive WAR, he's tied with Jeff Cirillo with a 3.3 defensive WAR, according to Baseball Reference. So better than you just. He's higher than Vinny Castilla, and Ezekiel
Ooh.
Tovar is at 3.1. So Tovar is right on his heels. But in batting average, he's 10th all time, tied with one Charlie Blackmon with a 295. Going through more of these lists. On base percentage, he's tied fourth with Ellis Burks, 378. His OPS is 15th. Games played, he's 21st with 613. Ryan Spielborg's is just ahead of him at 619. So Spill, he played more than Eric Young Sr.
And a baby Spilly.
Let's see. Plate appearances, he's 19th. At bats, he's 19th. He's 16th in runs scored, just behind Ryan McMahon and just ahead of Dexter Fowler at 378. 17th all time in hits, again behind Ryan McMahon, ahead of Fowler. Total bases, he's 20th. Doubles, he's 20th all time with 102. He is 8th all time in triples with 28. Just one ahead of Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story. Arenado had 27 triples. I think that's the more surprising thing.
Is that Brightich fence?
Yeah, the
Took
Brightich
away his
barrier.
homers. Yeah.
He's
Got about
21st
triples.
in RBIs. He's 17th in walks. Stolen bases. He's still number one in career stolen bases for the Rockies, 180. Next closest is Charlie Blackmon with 147.
Oh yeah, he's got that one.
It's going to be locked down for a while unless, you know, Brenton Doyle or somebody just starts burning rubber, baby. But yeah, singles, he's 14th. All this stuff, runs created. But overall, extra base hits in general, he's 21st with 160. So he's a top 50, sometimes even just top 20 pitcher or player of all time for the Rockies. He's 7th in hit by pitches.
He's one that whenever I do my all-time Rockies, I slot him in at second base.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting him and DJ LeMahieu. You know, those are my two. If I'm putting two guys per position, those are my two.
Yeah, yeah. When you think of franchise second baseman, it's Eric Young Jr. or Eric Young Sr. and then it's DJ LeMahieu. Like those are the two for Rockies history, and neither of them were drafted by the team. He kind of was, but neither of them was originally drafted and developed by the original team. But they found success with the Rockies, and I think EY kind of set that standard of this is a good type of player you can have that can have success in Colorado. There's the big boppers that you can have. Oh yeah, Coors Field. But EY is that other type of guy that gets on base, scores runs, steals bases. Classic old school type of leadoff guy you want.
And then post playing career, he's been, as as a as a major league coach, which I think is really cool. He had the opportunity to coach his son, at the major league level,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of staying. He's in with good baseball people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he went over and him and Walt Weiss back over to the Braves, and now he's over with Ron Washington
Mm-hmm.
with the Angels, and I think that's cool. I know whenever he's in Denver, the fans cheer him on, even though he's a coach for another team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when he comes back to Denver that first season or later that season after he got traded, he stepped to the plate for the first time, and the fans give him a huge standing ovation, raise his hat to the crowd and everything, and then he hits a single. Pretty classic.
You
But no, guy that deserves a lot of credit for helping build a brand of Rockies baseball along with a lot of those original Rockies. And, if they ever set up a Rockies Hall of Fame, which they should, handing out little purple jackets to guys or something, he should be there in that initial class along with the rest of a lot of those guys. Right there and well loved around the game. I don't think there's really anybody that could say anything bad about EY Senior. Beloved by everybody wherever he goes. But the next one, as we move on here, he ended up having a son. He had a son, also named Eric Young. There you go, Eric Young the second, but they went with Junior instead. Yeah, who also ends up playing for the Rockies, gets drafted by the Rockies, and ends up spending about 5-6 years in a Rockies uniform there in the late 2000s, early 2010s.
Well, let's get the rundown of Eric Young, El Menor, Mister Junior. Uh, Outfield pinch hitter. It says that in his baseball reference. Pinch hitter, second baseman, wore several numbers, which was odd to me. I thought maybe he'd try to wear his dad's number of 21, but with the Rockies, he was number 4, number 3, number 1, and just different numbers throughout his career. But he too was from. Actually, he's dang. I'm older than him by 2 months exactly.
There you go.
But he's from New Brunswick, New Jersey. He was drafted by the Rockies in the 30th round back when Major League Baseball had 50 billion rounds of the
Mm-hmm.
draft. But drafted 30th round in 2003, and he made his Major League debut in 2009 with the Rockies. Got a hit and played for the Rockies from 2009 to 2013. And those first few years, he was up and down.
Mm-hmm.
It almost felt like all those years he was up, he was down, he was up, he was down.
Yeah.
Injuries would come up here and there too. But in the 2013 season, he'd be traded to the Mets for Colin McHugh, the right-handed pitcher. And after that, he went over to the Braves, back to the Mets, the Brewers, the Yankees, the Angels, the Orioles, and with the Mariners was the end of it. But it was a lot of here and there, here and there, here and there, here and there, all over the place
Mm-hmm.
uh, for the much of his career. And then he went down, played in Mexico for a couple seasons, I think, and then was out of baseball and into coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And currently, EY Junior is a coach for the Nationals.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Or was he still? I think because he got replaced by Gerardo Parra at first base. I can't remember where he
Ooh,
is. I can't remember if he moved somewhere else or got a different. Uh, but he
what
was
is it
with the
with?
Nationals, and then he.
Yeah, he was with the Nationals.
So I can't remember because they replaced him with Gerardo Parra at first
Yeah,
base
because
this
Gerardo
year.
Parra, because they were just in town.
Yeah. So he might be. He's a coach somewhere, I think. Just not sure where anymore. But he's somewhere once again. But he's more into my era, and we've talked about players before that we just I can't stand this player. Like, why is he on the team? And for me, that's what Eric Young Jr. was for me a little bit because it was just kind of this, the Walmart brand of his dad. Or kept comparing him to his dad before. Of like, he's nowhere close to what his dad was, and there's so many other options. And I always thought like he doesn't do it. All he does is run fast. That's all he can do is run fast. And then the dude could fly. Like he was flying everywhere. But that's what always stuck out in my mind. Of he's awful. He can't get on base. All he does is steal, or all he does is run fast, and even that doesn't help him out a whole lot. No, he's not doing a whole lot. He's just kind of this backup outfielder. He's a player the Rockies kept trying to make happen, but he's just not going to happen. And so,
Yeah,
as a grown up as a young teenager, I think that's what I always thought of EY when I'd look at him like, oh, why are we playing this guy? We have so many better options across the board. No, he's a bench player at best, utility guy. But as I've aged and matured, as you'll find on the show that both of us have our instances, I think it's still a lot of those thoughts of him as a player. But it's like it's cool that he was able to be in a Rockies uniform, play for his dad's team, interact with his dad, be coached by his dad, and just kind of bring back that touch of history for the Rockies. And even if it wasn't the best player, he could still throw out some cool things because speed is awesome. It's cool to see guys run fast, and that can help out part of their game a lot. But I just always wish, like, man, I wish he could just get on base much
yeah,
more so he could make more of a difference.
yeah. But that looking real quick, he's actually the base running coordinator for the Mariners.
There you go.
So that's where he's at. That's where he's at right now. But same thing. He was one of those guys that really we're like the only reason why he's on this team is because he's Eric Young,
Yeah. The
and there's no reason why he should have played for 5 seasons.
hmm
Like it boggles my mind that he got 313 games in with the Rockies,
hmm
and he had the 1 year, the 2012 season, and he batted 316.
hmm
I was like, dang, okay, maybe. But it it wasn't anything great. The season before he had 27 steals. He only got caught 4 times, but he batted 243, 247. And
hmm
there was just nothing there.
Yeah, it was a lot of some empty stats. Like it's cool to see him, that 2012 year. Though those are good numbers. You'll take that from a guy. No, those are Eric Young esque. Just like his dad, that same gameplay. but it fell into that same thing of, unfortunately for him, he just couldn't elevate it beyond that. Where, yeah, the play discipline, he's putting the ball in play, but just there wasn't a whole lot happening with the bat. He didn't have, see, of all of it, just a lot of singles is what would happen for him. He's just hitting singles, getting on first base. Like, yeah, that's good. And then he'd steal a base. So he was doing those little things, but nothing that was really pushing the Rockies over the edge above whoever else they had on the team. And that was in an era where second base was still kind of up in the air, because during that era you had DJ wasn't quite installed in. You had Johnny Herrera bouncing in there. Mark Ellis is somewhere thrown in there. Marco Scudero was there in
Ugh.
2012. So that was kind of a black hole position. So like, Eric Young Jr., let's see if you have any of that Eric Young magic in you. Fortunately, he did not.
No.
But what was cool for me, and we'll get into some of his other things, what's cool is looking at on Twitter for the Eric Young Jr. post, and if I can pull it up here. Junior. So for Eric Young Jr., so in a Rockies uniform, 313 games played, 261 average, 329 on base, 342 slugging. He had 200 hits, 125 runs, 26 doubles, 9 triples, which you consider how many his dad had and then how many he has. Like, man, that tells you a lot about just the offense that he was providing, where he just wasn't able to take advantage of the extra base opportunities. 6 home runs, 40 RBIs, 70 stolen bases. But looking at this and people commenting on it originally, they're like, he's one of my favorite Rockies because of just how good of a guy he is. Just a good, solid dude that people loved. Super gracious and kind to everybody. Did always play with kind of that EY smile and everything. That's what people, I think, remember him most, is just a good, solid dude.
Yeah, always with, looking at it, he always with the smile, and I think those kind of guys are ones that after go straight into coaching. He was what, 37, and coaching. He was a base coach on a Major League Baseball team,
Mm-hmm.
and that says a lot about his character as a person, as a man, and I think understanding the game and understanding life.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one that's really cool. Like, yeah, we can hate on his stats and like, was he? He's not a great all-time Rocky, but you know, when you look past that and say, that's I think a lot of times that's even more important than the stat lines,
Mm-hmm.
is those kind of comments from people saying, you know, he he's we waited in line and he came and he waited and signed, gave us all autographs.
Yeah.
You know, he singled my kid out and gave him a ball or whatever it might be. I ran into him on the street and he said hi, or any of those kind of things, I think are way more important in the grand scheme of things than a stat line.
Yeah. And that's what we've talked about before, and we've talked about on this show before too. No, is we learn to appreciate guys more than just that stat line, because we look at the stat line like, man, we want everybody to be a superstar. We want everybody to be hitting 20 home runs and hitting 300 every year. And unfortunately, that's not everybody. And there's a lot of guys in baseball that don't do that, even for their careers. But there's beyond that, like guys like EY, like looking at his stats, like there's things to appreciate about him, and you can see what there is to like about him, even if he wasn't his dad, which probably is an unfair comparison to him. But it just wasn't the superstar you'd hope for, or was making a huge difference. But he could still make an impact on a game in just different ways, or in the clubhouse with his teammates, or like you're talking about now, going into coaching, he's still affecting the game in positive, good ways. But I was looking through, and then that 2012 season was absolutely his best. Doing a lot of stuff. He got that a lot of playing time in that awful, awful year for all of us. Uh, but in August of that season against the Dodgers, his dad's former team, he led the game off with a inside the park home run. It was the 13th inside the park home run in Rockies history, and it was only the fifth time in the expansion era that the first batter of a game hit an inside the park home run, and the first time in Rockies history. It was the first time in Rockies history that had happened. So
Has it
pretty.
ever happened again for the Rockies?
I don't think so.
I would. That's a
Yeah,
hard thing to do.
yeah, especially, but it can only happen when you have elite speed like that. But it's just a cool little thing, His dad has a legendary leadoff home run, and then he has a pretty notable leadoff home run in Rockies history. I'd say his dad's is probably more significant,
Yeah, a little
but
less obscure.
but that's still a pretty cool little fact.
Yeah, and then one more thing that I think about EY Jr. It's not when he was with the Rockies, it's when he was with the Mets. He has a collision at first base with Tim Hudson
Hmm.
at first base, and it's the one where he stepped on his ankle.
Hmm.
That it was totally, that's just a random play, and it blew up Hudson's ankle, and he didn't play again for the Braves, and EY Jr. just feeling awful.
Hmm.
That going back to what I said before is just his general concern of like, I'm so sorry that happened and the things after that. But if that was like one thing that I remember, but in the Rockies uniform, like those were dark times.
Hmm.
And like I said, I was so surprised to see that he played in as many games as he did.
Hmm. Yeah, even just like across his career and everything, or how much I was like at 2013, he gets traded over to the Mets, and then he ends up leading the league in stolen bases. He just turned into a completely different player with the Mets. Now, reminiscent of that 2012 season, where with the Mets, puts in a 251 average, had 38 stolen bases, drove in 26 runs in 91 games, just looked completely different. And we're going to, I think it was either a game the next year. So it was 2013 or 2014. I went with our other brother to a game. It was like cheap seat deal, and it was against the Mets. And EY was out there in center field, and I was just kind of sitting there seething in the scenes. When couldn't he be doing good stuff for us? And what is he doing here? But no, it's cool to see him, and always gracious, and cool to see him playing there. But the fact that he did have those little instances where he got to be an everyday player and got to play quite a bit, even just a couple years, and then he kind of fell into the just bouncing up and down as a depth guy for teams. But
And as a
still,
switch hitter.
yeah.
But those are always ones that I always wonder, was all of his life, was he a switch hitter? Did he have which one was he more dominant in? And what if he would have just stayed, on one side?
Hmm.
Would it have been, because it's very, we don't see it as much anymore, these switch hitters that like the Chipper Jones,
Hmm.
like that kind of stuff. We just don't see those guys anymore
Hmm.
that on both sides of the plate are just absolutely dominant.
Yeah, he was a pretty split left and right. Career 241 hitter right handed, career 252 hitter left handed.
He's the same thing, man.
Yeah, so basically the same player either side of the ball. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting stuff. But the one thing I do remember that we talked about, his dad's there on the team as well, helping, coaching, and just kind of being a general advisor, or just he wasn't even an official coach at that point. I think when they did this commercial, but he just kind of hanging out with the team because he's just around as an advisor. And so they geniusly, just perfectly do a commercial where, a father and son duo, and EY Jr. is just kind of being babied by his dad and the whole time going around doing
Cuts the
stuff.
steak for him.
Yeah, he's cutting the steak for him, and they're heading to the bus or something to travel to the airport, and EY Senior comes running up like, "Son, wait, you forgot Bobo," and like holding up the little teddy bear. I think was it EY Junior's going and opened up looking into his locker, and there's EY Senior with a camera taking a picture of him. Very good commercial. One of those classics. Oh man. Yeah, but I like Junior. You can never say anything bad about him, just like his dad. Super good dude. Always humble and gracious as a player. Good solid dude doing all kinds of good things. And fortunately, it didn't work out for his career. No, it wasn't a big stellar career. There's some good things in there, but fortunately, just didn't maybe pan out the way that he had hoped. And it's just that's baseball. That happens. Just the way it goes sometimes. But still, really cool that a father and son. They're the first and only combo that have ever hit a home run in a Rockies uniform, and that's cool that they just have that little bit of connection between them. Like, yeah, we both play for the Rockies, and pretty cool thing.
The EYs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and looking at Twitter, that's just what people were happy about. It's like, man, these were my favorite players. I love these guys. Love the EYs. They're just good, solid dudes. People loved them. Oh, what do you know? He's on Twitter. Might as well follow him. I don't think he's posted recently, but hey, yeah, not since 2022. But hey, that's how it goes. But just cool, and we good to highlight these two guys. They're ones that we're trying to figure out. Well, when can we do the EYs? And I think now was a good time. Good
Just a
solid.
couple weeks late off of Father's Day.
Yeah.
But it's all good.
Mm-hmm. It works. Yeah, and I think EY really quick here in the top 50. I know he's just behind his dad in like stolen bases, not too far behind in stolen bases during that time. Yeah, EY Jr. is 11th all time in stolen bases in franchise history at 70. It goes EY Sr., Charlie Blackmon, Larry Walker, Carlos Gonzalez, Dante Bichette is 5th, Willie Taveras 6th, Juan Pierre and Trevor Story 7th, Dexter Fowler, DJ LeMahieu is 10th, and then it's EY Jr.
Damn.
So
that's a crazy list.
Mm-hmm. People forget how good of a base stealer Dante Bichette was. But yeah, he has a place. Like I said, EY Jr., he can run fast. Couldn't do much else, but he could run fast. But that'll close it out here for this episode of Every Rocky Ever. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platforms or the video version here on YouTube. And we're getting close here, Dustin. We're going to have to do the Todd Helton one here pretty soon because it's a coming. And so if you do have memories or thoughts and things you want to share about Todd Helton, what he means to you and those things, you can always leave a response over on Twitter. I think you can message us. You can leave a comment here on YouTube, or we'll put out some other ways you can connect with us to get us those stories, because we want to do as best a celebration as we can for Todd Helton, and that'll be
Hall of Fame, baby.
That episode may even be our next one, or one very, very soon before by the time the Hall of Fame induction happens in July. So be on the lookout for that. You can follow us at Every Rocky Ever or at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's ROCKYMTN Rooftop. You can follow me at sideline_crowd, writing for purpleroad.com and fansfirstsports.com. And if you want, you can follow Dustin at Mr. T Spanish.
I do nothing.
Contact him if you want to learn Spanish, I guess.
There you go.
Hola. And I forgot we were going to do this one, but this fits one perfectly. The old soundboard, very applicable when EY Jr. and we talk about his dad
That's your daddy.
every time.
Nailed it.
It works perfectly. But that'll do it here. And we'll see you next time here on Every Rocky Ever. I'm Skylar. That's Dustin. Farewell.
Farewell.